Logan Sargeant, dropped with immediate effect, will be replaced by Academy driver Franco Colapinto for the remainder of the Formula One season. There we go. I've got the words out finally, and we might be live on the proper live stream. Sargeant has already obviously lost his drive for 2025. Williams knew that they were going to be bringing in Carlos Sainz anyway. So this isn't huge news. It's not going to dramatically change the future of the Williams Formula One team in any way. But I think what it does do is just open up some questions as to why they decided to go for this point in the season to get rid of Logan Sargeant and what's really going to happen. And then also we can talk about Franco Colapinto as well, what he might bring, why he's been the decision for Williams to bring in, and what can happen during the future. First and foremost, I think it's weird that they decided to look for this opportunity to get rid of Logan Sargeant. It's not like anything has changed in the last weekend. We can look at the statistics of it, and I was kind of thinking of it as like, well, we all know, and just the eye test, we know that Alex Albon has been outdoing Logan Sargeant this season. But how big a gap actually is it? And I think in your head, you have this idea of Logan Sargeant being absolutely dominated by Alex Albon, but you don't really know the statistics behind it. So I thought I'd look those up, and you're quite right. Alex Albon has absolutely dominated Logan Sargeant throughout the entire season. You know, just looking at qualifying, and I know there's the obvious outlier here for Logan Sargeant where he had to give his car to Alex Albon in Australia. I mean, if that wasn't a damning indictment on Logan Sargeant's season, I don't know what is. That must have completely destroyed his confidence. But since then, it's just been one-sided in terms of Williams qualifying and their general pace in the car. And I know that Alex Albon has had the upgrades before Logan Sargeant. I know that any new pieces of Williams infrastructure or anything that comes to the track goes straight to Alex Albon rather than Logan Sargeant. So he is always a couple of cars behind almost. But this is quite a damning look at Logan Sargeant, especially when Logan Sargeant first came into Formula One. I was looking at his Formula 2 and Formula 3 days, and the fact that he was going toe-to-toe with Oscar Piastri just a few seasons ago, and you look at where Oscar Piastri is now, the difference that those two have gone through in the last few years in terms of their Formula One careers and the trajectory that they're now on. I thought Logan Sargeant would really stand out in qualifying. I thought it was going to be very, very difficult for Logan Sargeant to get anywhere near Alex Albon over the course of an entire season in the races. But I thought there might be a few weekends where he really does stand out in qualifying. And Saudi Arabia last year was as close to what we got to that being true. And since then, since this year has come around, it's just been one-sided for Alex Albon. You look at it throughout the entire first half of the season, Alex Albon absolutely dominating, getting through into Q2 almost all of the time throughout the first 7 races, then a couple of Q3 appearances for Alex Albon, really showing that the Williams is moving in a good direction and showing that he's got pace inside that Williams car. Not a single Q2 performance until those Q3s come for Alex Albon. So again, it was like, is Logan Sargeant improving, or is the Williams car just better on those two tracks? Because we know that Alex Albon is the benchmark, right? And I assume, it's difficult to say because Logan Sargeant is teammate, but I assume that Alex Albon is getting the absolute maximum out of this car, or at least close to the maximum out of this car. So it's how close is Logan Sargeant getting to that? Throughout the first quarter of the season, all the way up until Spain, which was a disaster weekend for both, you can see Alex Albon's just absolutely dominating when it comes to qualifying. And then even after that, there's a couple of really solid performances. You could say 12th place, 14th place for Logan Sargeant are well worth, him being in the car for. But Alex Albon's picking up 9s and 11s. And it's just that little bit extra that Alex Albon's able to get that is just putting any positive that might go in Logan Sargeant's direction, just putting a little bit of a dampener on it and not really allowing us to praise Logan Sargeant for anything so far this season when it's come to qualifying. Then I was like, okay, maybe qualifying, although I thought that might be where Logan Sargeant stands out. Maybe in the races, he was able to get it on top of Alex Albon. And again, there's a little more up and down here because of things like DNFs and where like Canada, where they both DNF'd, for instance, for Alex Albon. But generally speaking, you can see that trend once again. Alex Albon always on the periphery of points, even if he's not getting them. I feel like finishing 12th, 11th, they were the places we were debating whether or not they should be worth Formula One points in the future. And then, of course, those 2-point scoring finishes to get him those 4 points so far this season compared to Logan Sargeant. And again, just getting rid of a few of this so we can stare in on Logan Sargeant. The best, I know, 14th in Saudi Arabia. It looked like, okay, maybe he's there. Maybe he can kind of click into it. But it's just generally been 17th places where you're beating one DNF and then the 2 Stake Sauber cars, effectively, is what 17th place means at this point in the season. 19th places, 17th is his most common, a 16th place in there. There is just that one opportunity where he could have scored points in Great Britain, the 11th place, where it was very, very close on another day, especially because it was such a weird race. It was mixed. There was intermediate tyres, there was wet weather tyres, dry weather tyres, and it was just very, very tough to get anything out of that Great British race. The fact that he finished in 11th place maybe was that shining light, maybe gave Williams that positivity of, maybe he can do something for the second half of the season. But now they've decided to make this decision, and it just seems very odd to make this decision now. Obviously, one race after the summer break. So looking at all of those statistics, looking at the fact that Alex Albon has absolutely destroyed Logan Sargeant in both qualifying and the races continually throughout the season, you'd wonder why on earth they've decided to basically make this decision now and go for getting rid of Logan Sargeant rather than just a race ago and doing it during the summer break. And it's come down to a couple of bits and pieces, really, hasn't it? Obviously, that big upgrade that went onto the Williams car over the course of the Dutch Grand Prix weekend, their first big upgrade of the season. And the reason that they weren't able to get the upgrade onto the car in the first place is because of crashes in places like Australia and Japan, where both Alex Albon and Logan Sargeant were to blame, and they did damage to that chassis, and we ended up having to send the Williams car back to the UK, then back to the racetrack, then back to the UK, and they were really dejected during the first half of the season. The entire Williams team, you could see the exhaustion that they had after a really long winter break, after a really tough winter break, and then a really horrible start to the season where you've got some massive crashes inside the first 5 races where you just don't want them to be, because you do have to send that car halfway across the globe. You have to get that car prepared within a day or two. There were people literally doing 24-hour shifts, sleeping at the Williams factory to be able to get that car back on the grid. And I feel like after that's happened in the first half of the season, James Vowles would have sat down with the drivers and said, like, this cannot happen again. We cannot have a start to the second half of the season where we put our team through the same stress and the same problems that they went through at the beginning of the season. And James Vowles, because of the man that he is and the way that he enacts how he, deals with everything day to day, I feel like that's how he would have talked about it. It would have been a cutthroat. We cannot have that happen. First race back after the summer break, big upgrade package goes onto the Williams car. Again, parts that they don't have spares for yet, because they are the first time they are going onto the Williams car. And in free practice 3, not even a competitive session, I know that it was damp. I know that he was on the intermediate tyres, but going onto the grass like that and doing damage to the car in that way, I know he's only a year and a half into his Formula One career, but at the same time, it just can't be rectified, and you cannot be doing that. And I think that was the final nail in the coffin. They realized, you know what, we're not getting anything out of Logan Sargeant for the second half of the season. Is he going to be able to help us in the Constructors' Championship? I feel like James Vowles has already gone now. Williams on 4 points, Alpine on 13 points. We're probably not catching Alpine. Pierre Gasly scoring points in the Netherlands and just showing that Alpine car has gone in such a positive trajectory that I feel like James Vowles has conceded and is like, we're not going to get Alpine in the constructor standings. We're going to end up finishing in 9th place. It's going to be Alex Albon scoring points, if anybody. And therefore, he's decided that actually it's not worth the risk. It's not worth the risk. And I feel like he's kind of had to do it as a statement. You know, Williams are here to play. Williams are here now, not as this team where someone like a Nicholas Latifi, for instance, can get away with being subpar for so long. I feel like it's a statement from James Vowles to get rid of Logan Sargeant at this point in the season and decide, you know what, enough is enough. You've got to leave the team. And I kind of back it. I think it's very, very harsh on Logan Sargeant. I think it's going to take Logan Sargeant a very long time to recover or recuperate from this. If he does continue racing, obviously he was linked to a few IndyCar seats. It was an IndyCar seat with Prema, I think, that he was basically a shoe-in for next season. Whether that will still go ahead, I hope so. I hope so for Logan Sargeant. He was such a promising talent coming through in Formula 3 and in Formula 2 that I do hope he does really get to that point where he can find a little bit of confidence once again. But I feel like James Vowles was given no choice in getting rid of Logan Sargeant and saying, we are no longer the team that accepts this. We are no longer the team that can, well, one, we know that they're a team that can't afford it, but two, a team that accepts drivers of that low caliber. We are no longer a team that is just taking drivers for the sake of taking drivers. And he kind of said that by signing Carlos Sainz in one way or another, didn't he? The fact that Carlos Sainz is coming to the team is a huge, huge plus for the team moving forwards. Let's flip it to the other side. Go to the other team. I've seen a few people in the chat now. What about Zach O'Sullivan? What about Mick Schumacher? Why has Colapinto been the choice for the Williams team? I think there's a few things going on here. When I talked about the possibility of Logan Sargeant being replaced during the summer break, I thought it might end up being Liam Lawson, just because RB is still looking for an opportunity for him to kind of come in. They could have seen Liam Lawson in a Williams next to Daniel Ricciardo in an RB. And okay, yeah, they're not in exactly the same car, but you could have got a little bit more of a feel for which of the two drivers was better when they were both on the field. Because obviously last time we saw Liam Lawson take part in Formula 1, Daniel Ricciardo wasn't in a car. So I thought Liam Lawson might be a good shout. But if you put Liam Lawson into the car, you're kind of just helping out RB, and Williams aren't really helping themselves in any way whatsoever. Unless they thought that Liam Lawson could be the difference, right? And score those 10 to 15 points that they need to overtake Alpine in the championship. So they obviously didn't think that Liam Lawson could do that, and therefore they've gone in that direction. Similar with Mick Schumacher. Is Mick Schumacher the driver to come in, 9 races to go in a season? Is he going to be able to score 10, 15 points, or even half of that, 7, 8 points, whilst Alex Albon does similar, to get those points that are needed to overtake Alpine? Probably not. And unfortunately, Mick Schumacher has a little bit of a reputation of crashing quite a lot in Formula 1, right? He isn't the kind of driver that during his time at Haas was able to keep 4 wheels on the track fairly consistently. Like, that was the reason Haas ended up having to look in a different direction. So yeah, Mick Schumacher for me, not the one either. Liam Lawson, you're just helping out somebody else. Mick Schumacher, no point, because there's no longevity in it either, and I don't think he's going to win you any championship points without also causing you a few headaches here and there. Then you've got someone like Kimi Antonelli, but straight away Toto Wolff came in and kiboshed that. And I think Williams probably would have discussed it with Toto Wolff, but Toto Wolff didn't want it, decided that Kimi Antonelli was going to stick to his training program that he's got for Mercedes instead. So you're down to the Williams junior drivers, effectively, Zach O'Sullivan and Colapinto. And I think they just looked at the Formula 2 season and said, well, which of the two drivers is currently performing better in Formula 2? And unfortunately for Zach O'Sullivan, Colapinto has had the better Formula 2 season so far. And therefore, they went for one of their drivers and put him in the car for the final 9 races of the season. I think there's a good reason for this, and also a few things that maybe might go a little bit wrong. Let's start with the negatives. Obviously, he is a complete rookie to Formula 1. Yes, he's been in and around Williams for a little while now, and he's been in Formula 2, very good in Formula 2, but he's not an absolute guarantee keep all 4 wheels on the track. You know, if they had a Nico Hülkenberg in reserve, you know, imagine this was a couple of years ago and Nico Hülkenberg was still the reserve driver for Aston Martin. You'd probably look at that maybe. because you could actually, you know, but then they also have got Carlos Sainz signed up already. They could have had that idea of possibly bringing in Nico Hülkenberg for the future. But that's by the by. They've gone for Franco Colapinto, in my opinion, because he does offer a little bit of solace just in case it goes wrong in 2026. Hear me out here. I know that they've got Carlos Sainz coming into the team, and Carlos Sainz would have had Williams as his third or fourth choice. I think, Carlos Sainz, if that Red Bull seat would have become available, he'd have gone there. If that Mercedes seat would have become available, he'd have gone there. I think Williams was definitely the third, maybe even fourth choice for Carlos Sainz throughout the entire season. If one of those seats becomes available again, Carlos Sainz would not think twice of dropping out of the Williams seat and going back to a Red Bull or going back to a Mercedes and asking if that seat is available to him. And that's something that Williams do have to keep in mind. And also Alex Albon to an extent. I could see Alex Albon continuing to perform well, continuing to drive well, and again being like, if the Williams, car isn't there in 2026 and 2027, we're kind of looking those 2-3 years in the future, maybe does look again. Alex Albon was also linked to a Ferrari seat not so long ago. Let's not forget. He's talked about, if Carlos Sainz moved, if Charles Leclerc moved, Alex Albon would be the replacement at Ferrari. And therefore, there are big seats that would want Alex Albon in there if he was available. So they could lose Carlos Sainz and Alex Albon in the near future. So I think getting Colapinto in now, you give him 9 races of Formula 1 experience. You give him an incentive as well. The fact that he's been in the Formula 1 car, the fact that he can continue to work behind the scenes with Williams. He'll probably go into like a testing/simulator role. And the fact that he's been in the Formula 1 car is so good for him being a test driver and being a simulator driver, because he'll have a real understanding of that Williams car from those 9 races with it. I think it's a really, really solid idea. And you then have that backing. You can say to him, look, we don't know what the car... Well, we're really hoping that the car is going to be amazing in 2026. But if Carlos Sainz does decide to leave, if Alex Albon does decide to leave, you are already, if you perform well in these 9 races, giving us a reason to put you into that seat in the future. So he could end up, being the reserve driver for a couple of years. Carlos Sainz disappears off and Colapinto gets himself into that full-time Williams racing seat if he does well in these 9 races. So I think they're kind of future-proofing a little bit with Colapinto here. But I can completely understand. I'm seeing still a few people in the chat saying it's a little bit brutal on Sargeant. I don't think Colapinto is going to do better than Logan Sargeant straight off the bat. I don't think Colapinto is going to score any points this season. I'd be really, really impressed if he did. I don't think he's going to score that many points this season. We've only seen Alex Albon in the point scoring places twice in 15 races. If he manages to get in there once in the last 9, that would be absolutely staggering to me. But I think it's the longevity. You don't have that longevity with a kind of driver like Lawson, who is Red Bull through and through. I don't think you'll ever be able to prize Lawson from Red Bull in the same way that they did Alex Albon, just because Lawson isn't going to go from being the reserve driver at RB, where he's got the possibility of a Red Bull seat, to the reserve driver at Williams, where he's only got the possibility of a Williams seat. You're not going to be able to really convince Mick Schumacher the same. I think Mick Schumacher has almost given up on Formula 1, to be honest with you. He won't say that himself, but it's getting towards the point where it's not going to go towards Mick Schumacher, and I can't see Mick Schumacher returning in any meaningful way on the Formula 1 grid, unfortunately. Then it was the 2 Williams reserves. Which one's been better? Franco Colapinto, in my opinion. Don't know a massive amount about his background. I kind of looked at various bits throughout his Formula 2 career. He's done very well this season. Obviously has some massive backing. So for those of you that don't know, he is Argentinian. There's not been a huge amount of Argentinian drivers in Formula 1 outside of like the first few years of Formula 1. You go back 70 years, there's some Argentinian world champions in there. But in recent memory, I think he's got to be the first Argentinian on the grid, maybe since 2000? Is he the first Argentinian on the grid since the millennium? I don't know. Let me know in the comments if you know. I feel like it would be close, right? There's maybe one in there that I'm forgetting along the lines, but it is a massive opportunity for him, and really, really big news to have an Argentinian back on the Formula One grid. Oh, there you go. Formula One dude. It's last Argentine time was 2001. So I was pretty close. Not too far off with the first in this millennium. Ooh, Felipe Drugovich. People are saying Drugovich, though. Again, is there that longevity there? I suppose there is, because he doesn't. I can't see him getting into that Aston Martin seat anytime soon. But he doesn't. I think the only thing with Colapinto, because he's already a Williams driver, they already know him well. And you've got to think, Colapinto is coming in and racing in, 5 days' time? So Colapinto has got to get everything ready. Williams have got to get everything ready for him in 5 days to be able to chuck him in. And I think it's slightly different to, when Nick de Vries came in for one race last season. It's 9 races, and they maybe want someone that they know they can work with behind the scenes. I'm sure Felipe Drugovich would be no trouble whatsoever. But just in case, I think they've gone with the devil that you know. The devil that you know, rather than some guy from another team. But yeah, Felipe Drugovich is a great shout. Not one that had come straight off of my mind. Fangio, yeah, that's what I was kind of getting at with the 70 years ago. Maybe even more now, right? 74 years ago, was it? The first season of Formula One. Your Fangios, your Ascaris. Getting the wins in there. But massive to have an Argentine on the grid. I'd like to know, actually, if anyone is from Argentina, or probably not in the live chat now, but I know that we have people from all over the place, and maybe we'll have some Argentinians join the live stream on the weekend for Monza. I'd love to know, is there still like a big love for Formula One in Argentina? It's just something I have no idea about. And I'm sure, he's got some sponsors that surely, bring in some Argentinian money in the same way that, I don't know, every driver has sponsors in one way. But because he's the only Argentine, and because he's the first Argentine for so long, is there an opportunity there for Williams to actually get quite a bit of money by bringing him in and then having him in that situation for the foreseeable future? I know it's only 9 races, but you can make a lot of money in 9 races if you do it right. The spicy move would have been to bring in Carlos earlier and let Behrman have the rest of the season at Ferrari. I don't think you'd have convinced Ferrari to do that. I think Ferrari know Carlos Sainz is a very, very good driver. Like, Carlos Sainz was 100% guaranteed to be in that Ferrari seat until Lewis Hamilton came knocking on the door. I think there's only maybe 2 or 3 drivers on the Formula One grid that Ferrari would have replaced Carlos Sainz with. Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen. I think that's literally it. I can't think of anybody else on the Formula One grid or any drivers anywhere where Ferrari would have replaced Carlos Sainz. I think they're the only 2 that could have knocked on the door and displaced Carlos Sainz from that Ferrari seat. So I cannot see them, being like, yeah, Williams, have your driver 9 races early. We don't want him for maybe the Constructors' Championship that we're still trying to battle for. You got to remember, Ferrari have been fairly quick in the first race back after the summer break. Charles Leclerc was on the podium. Carlos Sainz finished in 5th place ahead of a Red Bull fairly comfortably. They beat both of the Mercedes fairly considerably as well. Ferrari had a really good Dutch Grand Prix. They don't want to get rid of Carlos Sainz as of yet. I'm sure Williams would have asked about it during the summer break, and Ferrari would have said, no, you are not. Although Ollie Behrman coming in would be interesting, but we'll have to wait for that. He's got a good few He's got a good few free practice sessions lined up for Haas over the second half of the season. So we'll see Ollie Behrman out on track. Maybe not in a competitive capacity though, unless Kevin Magnussen manages to get another suspension point on his license. Not from Argentina, but South America. Have many friends there. Motorsport in Argentina is huge. There you go. Many superb drivers there from years ago. Reutemann was the best after Fangio. That rings a bell. Carlos Reutemann. Is he the one that was most recent? That does ring a bell. But yeah, I'm glad that it is still massive because I feel like it has such roots in Formula One, doesn't it? Argentina is almost the bedrock of Formula One in terms of world championships and those first few drivers that really set Formula One apart from the motor racing that was also going on in that 1950s era after the Second World War. And the real route that has become Formula One is very Argentinian, has to be said. Daniel Ricciardo will be fine next year. As a pundit on the Australian feed, harsh. I did think about that, like the fact that Liam Lawson, I feel like is the best driver they could have got for that second Williams seat. But then they're just helping out RB. And you don't really want to be doing your closest, or what you're hoping will be next year, one of your closest rivals a favour. You know what I mean? Like, Williams want to be directly competing with RB in 2025 and maybe even 2026 as well. So we'll have to wait and see there. But you don't really want to do it. Last Argentine was Mazepin. Did 4 races in 2001. There you go. F1 dude edits should just be doing my job, I think, at this point. Like, just knows much more about it. Carlos was in the 70s. Okay, maybe I've done like a short or something. He's popped up. But I'm going to call it there, I think. We've touched upon why Logan Sargeant was gotten rid of, why this weird decision was made now. I mean, Logan Sargeant just hasn't had a very good season throughout the entirety of it. Like, he's been so subpar compared to Alex Albon. Then I think that decision by James Vowles to basically call out his drivers and say this second half of the season can't start in the same way the first half did, after they just absolutely ruined their development for the entirety of this season, really, by having those big crashes in the first few races of the season. Logan Sargeant coming in, doing it first race after the summer break. I feel like James Vowles almost just had to do something, like whether that was like sideline Sargeant for just a couple of races, or now, as we've seen, get rid of Sargeant for the last 9. He had to do something. There had to be a statement there from James Vowles, and this is the way that he's decided to go with it. And I kind of respect the fact that he stood to a lot of his guns, to be honest with you. I think Sargeant will end up with a seat somewhere. Sargeant will probably end up going to IndyCar, maybe WEC. There's like a WEC project that he can be a part of. I'm sure Williams will still try and direct him in one way or another, even though he is leaving the racing team and has sort of left on quite a sour note. I would hope that Williams still kind of help Logan Sargeant in one way or another. And then big eyes will be on Colapinto next weekend. You know, we saw the scrutiny that Behrman was put under in Saudi Arabia, and he didn't even get the free practice sessions. When you do come into Formula One for 1-2 events, the eyes are on you, aren't they? You know, it's your big opportunity to do so. And Colapinto's got 9 races. It's a big chance. It's more than we saw Liam Lawson last season, for instance. 9 races, a huge opportunity to really see where he can be in that Williams car, to try and get close to Alex Albon. Like, imagine if he outperforms Alex Albon in even just one qualifying or one race. He will have beaten what Logan Sargeant has done throughout the entire season. And then if Colapinto can score a point, an Argentinian scoring a point in Formula One, that would be absolutely incredible. I cannot wait to see what he does. But I'll leave it there. Thank you guys so much for watching. Apologies for all the technical issues at the beginning of the stream. If you could leave a like, subscribe to the channel, all that good stuff. Actually got a short or 2 dropping later on. It's already scheduled to go out. I can't remember what time. And then also a video tomorrow for you as well. And the new structure to the live streams. After you guys voted, we're going to be live on Friday for my preview, predictions, and analysis of all the upgrades and free practice sessions for the Monza Grand Prix. Then on Saturday, we'll be live for the qualifying sessions. Sunday, we'll be live for the Grand Prix as well. Thank you guys so much. I will see you then.